All right, guys, I wanted to talk to you about something called transformational vocabulary. It's amazing. It's transformational. Anyway, I learned this technique through a couple of people that I was talking with that went to a Tony Robbins seminar. A lot of people may know that I'm a platinum partner with Tony Robbins. I go to a lot of his events, and then I got my hands on tapes and started listening about this concept, and it's really changed my life. It's really cool. So it has to do with how we communicate with ourselves about events we have and feelings we have in our life. So our mind, when we're little, when we're small, we're developing up, when we're children, we develop to adults. When we feel emotions, we don't know what they are. What our mind does is we get feelings in our body and we use words to label what those feelings are. So this is the underlying concept of transformational vocabulary. For example, I have a 5.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old, and a lot of times they feel emotions, but they don't really know what they're called. But they're starting to give them labels. I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm mad, I'm frustrated. Those are emotions that they're starting to understand what those mean, and they're giving them labels, words for them. Of course, when you're small, you don't know the difference between happy and blissful, happy and euphoric, happy and feeling outrageous, or sad, or just feeling a little down, or frustrated, or just feeling a little perturbed. So, as adults, we develop a much bigger palette of language for which to describe our emotions. So, transformational vocabulary is about how we label to ourselves, how we communicate to ourselves the feelings that we have and the words that we use to label them. So I want to give you a couple of examples. This is awesome. This is how it works. In some cultures, there's no word for war. They actually had studied some cultures, some indigenous cultures in the Amazons who had never been to a war, never fought with each other, never did any of that. And they had absolutely no word for war. There's some cultures in the world that they found in Africa that had no word for violence or, physically harming each other. Guess what? They never experienced it. They never did that. There's some cultures that they found, some indigenous cultures, that had no word for adultery or cheating or anything like that. Guess what? They were all faithful to each other. What had happened is Tony Robbins told a story about an event that happened. So there was 3 people sitting there, him and 2 of his friends. And there was an individual that they were working with that stole a bunch of money from him, to make it simple. They had ripped him off, lied to him. So Tony's friend on the right side got furious and said, "How could you let that guy do it? That guy's a liar, he's a cheat, oh my God, that guy, you should go get him, let's go find him right now." And he became not mad, but absolutely, completely engulfed and enraged. Tony himself was like, "Oh, I can't believe he did this to me." He was like, "Oh, this makes me mad." So Tony's state was mad. The other guy was rage. The guy to the left of Tony, his other friend, was, what are you going to do? That's how people are. He was like, Tony asked him, "How do you feel about it?" He said, "Oh, slightly annoyed," right? So he started thinking about this experience, and then I started thinking about it in my life. Well, let me go back to that. What had happened was they all had the same experience, the same input of data that came to them from the outside world, but they all experienced different emotion. And the reason they did is the words that they used to describe the emotion. So then what Tony did is he decided to tell his friends, for the next week, don't use the word mad or angry. Use the word a little peeved or a little upset. So those group of 3 guys, they started to do that. So whenever they would start to get to the point where they would feel angry, they'd say, I'm a little upset. It makes me a little upset. I'm a little peeved or a little irritated about it. So they gave themselves a new label for how they felt. And then Tony tells a story about how he was talking with a friend, and he's like, and Tony said, "It occurred to me, you're always having a good time, and you just seem like you're, and then the guy said, yeah. He said, and Tony's like, you're never bored, are you? He's like, well, the word boredom isn't in my vocabulary. And then he went, boom, there it is. So if you don't have the word boredom in your vocabulary, you won't experience it. When those three men, Tony and his two friends, took out the word anger and madness, being mad, out of their vocabulary for a week, they didn't experience it. So what I do, and all these ideas I do in ChrisKay.com and everything, I field test with my friends, I field test with people I know, people I work with. So what I did is I learned this concept about 2 months ago, and I'm like, okay, because anything I hear, I'm like, it's bullshit, it's not gonna work, I don't believe it. So I'm like, okay. So I took this concept and I applied it to myself for a week. And guess what? I ran into some situations where I started to get mad, and I was like, you know, I'm just a little annoyed right now. I ran into a situation where I started to get sad or depressed. You know what I labeled it? I relabeled it for myself that actually what's happening is my mind and my body and my soul are just, they need to learn about it. I'm learning about myself. I must be having this feeling because I'm actually learning something about myself right now. So I relabeled sadness and depression as learning about myself. I relabeled being angry or mad as being mad as just feeling a little irritated. And so I think what I've tried to do is take the negative emotions out of my vocabulary and add more positive ones into my vocabulary. So I encourage everyone as a test just to try this. Maybe I'm full of it, but it's worked for me. If you start to feel your emotions go to a negative place where you don't want them, maybe you feel a little irritated, maybe you feel mad, maybe you feel upset, maybe you feel guilty, whatever the emotion is that you don't want. Unless you want those emotions, I hope you don't. Whatever you start to go that way, catch yourself and say, hey, can I relabel this as something else? Instead of feeling guilty because I've let somebody down, maybe I should say, you know, I probably could have made clear my expectations, or made clear their expectations of me a little bit better. Maybe instead of feeling mad, you can say, you know what, actually I'm not really mad, I'm just a little frustrated. There's no reason for me to get mad at the traffic or that crazy lady that cut me off going south on the 101. There's no reason to get mad. Actually, is that worth my energy? Maybe it's just a little frustrating to me. So as you look and you transfer these words from mad to frustrated, or frustrated to slightly irritated, or maybe irritated to peeved, or a little annoyed might be an example. That's one way that you can really increase your happiness in life. The secret to all of this, and the underlying technology from all this, is something called NLP, which stands for Neuro-Linguistic Programming. And what it means is all the experiences that happen to us, we actually get to decide what they mean to us in our brain and then in our body. So there'll be more on that later. But in the meantime, think about how you use your words and how you talk to yourself, because ultimately you can tell yourself how you want to feel about things. And I'll leave you with one more story. When Nelson Mandela went to prison for 25 years, he didn't tell himself this is unjust and this is unfair. He didn't tell himself this has been a waste of my time and I want to go out and kill every white person, right? He said, I have been given this opportunity to learn and prepare myself for when I'm going to be ready to lead this nation. And so he labeled it differently. And he didn't say, I'm mad. He said, I'm happy about this because now I have all the time in the world to learn to become a leader. So that's the power of figuring that out in your brain about how you want to decide how you feel about things. So if someone can be falsely imprisoned for 25 years and decide to tell themselves it's a good thing, my question is, what's our excuse to not let the traffic or your crazy bald-headed boss or whatever annoy you? Maybe he's not really annoying, well maybe he is being annoying, but maybe you can tell yourself, you know what? That's just the character being silly. So that's transformational vocabulary. Just become aware of how you're talking to yourself and how you're labeling your experiences, because you're in control of the labels you put on your emotions. And those labels, again, are the words that you assign to those emotions. It's worked for me, it's worked for my friends. Try it out for a week, and pick maybe 3 emotions that you don't want to experience, and then take those and relabel them to something else. Maybe you can do as powerful as Nelson Mandela did and say, oh my God, anger actually means enlightenment, or something like that, like he did. So check it out, have a good time with your emotions, and happiness always.